The last thing my daughter ever said to me as a child was, "Dad, don't come. Michael says it's too complicated." I stood there holding a birthday gift she never opened. I waited 7 years for her to come back, and when she finally knocked on my door, she wasn't the little girl I lost. She was carrying the truth. Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube. I remember the exact sound her voice made that night. It wasn't crying, it wasn't angry. It was careful. Careful in a way no 12-year-old should ever have to be. I was standing in the kitchen of my small rented apartment, staring at a half-frosted chocolate cake I'd made from scratch. There were pink candles in the shape of the number 12 sitting beside it. I had spent an hour getting them perfectly straight. My daughter Emma loved chocolate cake with extra frosting. She used to lick the spoon and laugh when I pretended to scold her mother for letting her eat sugar before dinner. That was before the divorce, before lawyers, before custody schedules written in cold official language, before Michael. The phone rang at 6:42 p.m. I smiled when I saw Emma's name on the screen. She was supposed to be dropped off at 7. I thought maybe she was calling to rush me. "Dad, are the balloons up?" she would usually ask. Or, "You didn't forget the movie, right?" I answered with a grin in my voice. "Hey, birthday girl." There was a pause. Just breathing. Then she said it. "Dad, don't come. Michael says it's too complicated." At first, I didn't understand. "Don't come where, sweetheart?" Another pause. I could hear someone in the background, a television maybe, or footsteps. She lowered her voice slightly. "He says it's better if we just do dinner here. It's complicated." Complicated. That word didn't belong to her. That word belonged to adults who didn't want to explain things. That word belonged to her mother during our last year of marriage. That word belonged to courtrooms. I swallowed. "Emma, I thought you were coming here tonight." "I know, Michael says it'll confuse things." Confuse things. I looked down at the cake, at the candles, at the streamers taped unevenly across my ceiling because I'd never been good at decorations. My hand started shaking, just slightly. "Do you want to come?" I asked her gently. There was silence again, longer this time. "I don't want anyone to be upset," she whispered. That was the moment something inside me cracked. A child should worry about homework, about friends, about what outfit to wear to school, not about keeping the peace between grown adults. "It's okay," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "If that's what you want. It's just complicated, Dad." And then she hung up. I stood there for a long time, staring at the phone screen long after it went dark. I didn't call back. I didn't argue. I didn't drive over there. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe it was my first act of love. You see, the divorce had been ugly, not loud and explosive, just slow and suffocating. Her mother, Karen, had said we'd grown apart. I later learned she'd already grown closer to Michael. He was calm, polished, confident, the kind of man who knew how to say the right things in front of judges. In court, I wasn't painted as dangerous, just unstable, emotionally reactive, still processing the separation. Words that sound harmless, but weigh heavy in custody decisions. I got weekends, alternate holidays, 2 weeks in the summer. At first, Emma would run into my arms during pickups. She'd chatter the entire drive to my place. She'd tell me about school projects and the way Michael folded napkins into triangles at dinner. "He likes things neat," she once told me. I remember that. Over time, the chatter slowed. She'd check her phone more. She'd say things like, "Mom says we have plans Sunday night, so I need to be back early." Or, "Michael thinks it's better if I focus on school this weekend." Michael thinks. Michael says. Michael believes. I tried to stay calm. I told myself blending families was hard. I told myself not to make Emma choose. I promised I would never make her feel like she had to defend loving me. But that birthday phone call was different. After I hung up, I lit the candles anyway. I sang softly to an empty room. Then I blew them out myself. I kept the cake in the fridge for 3 days before throwing it away. That night, I wrote her a letter. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't beg. I just told her I loved her, that I would always show up if she wanted me, that my door would never close. I never sent it. Because the next week, Karen filed a motion to restructure visitation. She said Emma was struggling emotionally with the transitions, that too much back and forth was hard on her. And somehow, I became the back and forth. The judge reduced my time. Then months later, after another complaint that I pressured Emma by asking if she wanted to spend more time together, my visits were suspended pending evaluation. I wasn't abusive. I wasn't negligent. I was just inconvenient. And so I stepped back. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much to make her life harder. I sent birthday cards every year. They were returned unopened. I dropped off Christmas gifts at Karen's porch. I never saw Emma open them. Eventually, I stopped going to the porch. I mailed things instead. Then, I stopped sending gifts altogether and started writing letters I never mailed. I kept them in a wooden box in my closet. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone I imagined she might be reaching. When she turned 16, I saw a picture online. A friend of a friend shared it publicly. Emma in a blue dress smiling beside Michael at some school event. He had his hand on her shoulder, proud, present. I stared at that photo for an hour. She looked taller, more serious. There was something guarded in her eyes. I zoomed in on her smile, trying to see if it reached her eyes the way it used to when she was little and missing her 2 front teeth. It didn't. I told myself I was imagining that. 7 years passed like that, quietly, painfully. I built a life around the absence. I worked longer hours. I moved to a smaller town. I stopped dating. It didn't feel right to build something new while the most important piece of my heart was missing. Every year on her birthday, I baked a chocolate cake. I lit the candles. I sang alone. And every year, I whispered the same thing into the silence. I'm still here. I didn't know if she'd ever come back. I didn't know if she even remembered the sound of my voice. But I waited, because that's what fathers do when they love their children more than their own pride. And then, on a quiet Tuesday evening in October, when I had finally convinced myself that waiting was foolish, someone knocked on my door.
The knock was soft, not urgent, not aggressive, just hesitant. The kind of knock someone makes when they aren't sure they're welcome. I almost didn't answer. I had just gotten home from work. I was still in my button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The house was quiet the way it had been for years now. I remember glancing at the clock, 6:38 p.m. For a strange second, my chest tightened. That was almost the exact time she had called me 7 years ago. The knock came again. I walked to the door slowly, not expecting anything significant. Maybe a neighbor, maybe a delivery, I didn't even check the peephole. I just opened it, and the world shifted. She was standing there. Emma, 7 years older, 7 years taller, her hair longer, darker, her face thinner, more defined, but those eyes, those were still hers, still the same deep brown that used to light up when I pushed her on the swings. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked smaller than I expected, not physically, but emotionally, like someone carrying something heavy. "Hi, Dad," she said. My knees nearly gave out. Her voice had changed, lower, more mature, but it still wrapped around the word Dad the same way. I gripped the edge of the door to steady myself. I had imagined this moment so many times. In my dreams, I had speeches prepared. I had lines about forgiveness and open arms. But standing there in real life, all I could manage was a whisper. "Emma?" She nodded. And then I noticed the suitcase beside her, a small one, worn at the corners. My heart started pounding. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside immediately. Of course you can." She walked past me into the house. I closed the door behind her, my hands trembling so badly I had to press them together. She looked around slowly, taking everything in, the modest living room, the old couch, the framed photos on the wall. Her photos. I had never taken them down. School pictures from elementary years, a crayon drawing she once made of the two of us holding hands under a purple sun, a candid photo of her laughing at the beach when she was 8. She stopped in front of that one. "You kept these?" she asked. "I never stopped being your father." Her shoulders shook slightly at that, but she didn't cry. Not yet. We stood in an awkward silence, 7 years of absence sitting between us like a third person in the room. "Are you hungry?" I asked, because it was the only normal thing I could think of. She gave a faint smile. "You always ask that." "You were always hungry." That almost made her laugh. Almost. She set her suitcase down near the couch, but didn't open it. She remained standing, as if unsure whether she planned to stay. "I shouldn't have just shown up. I know it's been a long time." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You don't need permission to knock on my door." Her eyes finally filled with tears. "I didn't know that," she whispered. Those words hit harder than anything else she could have said. I motioned toward the couch, and we both sat, leaving a careful distance between us, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to reflect the years. "I've thought about coming so many times," she began, staring at her hands. I didn't know what was true anymore." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She let out a shaky breath. "I was told you stopped trying, that you moved away because you didn't want the responsibility, that you said it was easier without me." I felt something cold spread through my veins. "I never said that," I said quietly. She nodded slowly. "I know." "How do you know?" She looked up at me then, really looked at me, as if studying my face for the first time in years. "Because I found the letters." The room seemed to tilt. "What letters?" "At Mom's house, in the attic. There's a storage box with your name on it. I was looking for old school projects and I found envelopes, dozens of them, all addressed to me." My breath caught. "I never got those," she said, her voice breaking. "They were unopened. Some of them weren't even sealed." Karen, or Michael, they had kept them. "I read them," Emma continued, "every single one." My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear her next words. "You wrote to me on my 13th birthday. You told me you baked a cake and sang to an empty kitchen." I closed my eyes.
I had written that exact sentence. You wrote when I got my driver's permit. You wrote when I made the honor roll. You even wrote when our dog died. I had heard about the dog from social media. I thought you didn't care. I thought you chose not to fight for me. I didn't want you caught in a war, I replied hoarsely. Every time I pushed back legally, it made things harder for you. I thought if I stayed quiet, you'd have peace. I didn't have peace, she said, tears falling freely now. I had confusion. That word again. Completed, confusing, adult words pressed into a child's mouth. What happened? I asked gently. Why now? She wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. Because I finally saw him clearly. Michael? She nodded. He's not who I thought he was. There was something else in her expression now. Not just sadness, fear. I leaned in forward instinctively. Emma, what happened? She hesitated, her hands clenched together in her lap. I found out he's been controlling more than just visits. He's been controlling everything. A chill ran down my spine. I'm 20 now, and I realized I don't even know how to make decisions without wondering what he'll think. Her voice cracked. And when I told him I wanted to look for you, he got angry, really angry. I felt my protective instincts surge for the first time in years. Did he hurt you? I asked carefully. She shook her head quickly. No, not like that. He just makes you feel small, like you owe him everything. That somehow felt worse. And Mom? I asked. Emma looked down. She believes him. Silence settled over us. 7 years of silence led to this moment, to my daughter sitting on my couch, finally seeing the truth. I'm sorry, she whispered suddenly, for that phone call, for telling you not to come. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. You were 12, I said firmly. None of this was your fault. She looked at me then, the way she used to when she'd scraped her knee and needed reassurance. I didn't know where else to go, she said. And in that moment, I realized something. She hadn't just come for answers. She had come home. For a few seconds after she said it, neither of us moved. I didn't rush to hug her. I didn't want to overwhelm her. 7 years is a long time to go without touching someone you love. It changes the way you measure distance. I don't know how long I can stay, she said quietly, glancing toward the suitcase as if it might answer for her. You can stay as long as you need, I replied. There's no expiration date on being my daughter. Her lips trembled at that. I stood slowly. Your room is still... Well, it's not your old room, but I kept it ready. That wasn't entirely true. The room had been an office for a while, but about 3 years ago, something in me couldn't stand the desk sitting where her bed used to be. I had moved everything out and put a simple twin bed back in. Fresh sheets, a dresser, neutral walls. Not a child's room, not yet a stranger's. Just space. I walked her down the hallway. My heart pounded with every step. When I opened the door, she stopped at the threshold. It's simple, I said quickly. I didn't know what you'd like, Mal. She stepped inside slowly, running her fingers along the dresser. You kept it, she murmured. I kept hope, I corrected gently. She turned toward me then, and for the first time since she arrived, she crossed the distance between us. She hugged me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't collapsing into each other the way movies show. It was tentative at first, like she was asking permission. I wrapped my arms around her carefully, afraid she might pull away. She didn't. Instead, she pressed her face into my chest, and I felt her body begin to shake. I'm so sorry. I thought you didn't want me. I closed my eyes and held her tighter. There has never been a day, I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts, not a single day that I didn't want you. She cried then, deep, aching sobs that sounded like they'd been waiting years for release. I let her cry. Fathers don't always get to fix things. Sometimes the only thing we can offer is a steady place to fall apart. After a while, her breathing slowed. She pulled back, embarrassed, wiping her cheeks with the sleeve of her sweater. "Sorry," she said. "You never have to apologize for feeling," I replied. We went back to the living room, and I made tea because it gave my hands something to do. She sat at the table watching me like she was relearning my movements, the way I tapped the spoon against the mug, the way I leaned against the counter. "Do you hate Mom?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. "No," I said after a moment. She studied my face, searching for honesty. I was angry. I was hurt. But hate is heavy, and I had enough weight already. She nodded slowly. "Michael says you walked away because you couldn't handle responsibility." I let out a slow breath. "Michael says a lot of things." She gave a faint, almost guilty smile at that. "He always made it sound logical, like he was protecting me from instability, from confusion." "Did you feel unstable with me?" I asked gently. She shook her head immediately. "No, I felt free." The word hit me like sunlight through a cracked door. "Then what changed?" I asked. She stared into her tea. "It was gradual. He'd say little things, that you forgot a pickup because you didn't care, that you were late because I wasn't a priority, that you asked too many questions because you didn't trust me." I frowned. "I was late once. There was traffic." "I know that now," she whispered. "But when you're 12 and an adult keeps repeating something calmly, you start to believe it." I felt anger rise in my chest, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't the moment for rage. "He'd say you were trying to turn me against them whenever you asked about my life, so I stopped telling you things. I didn't want to cause problems." That explained the distance, the shorter car rides, the quiet car rides. "I thought you were growing away from me naturally," softly said. "I thought you were losing interest," she replied. We sat with that painful symmetry for a moment. "I found something else in the attic," she said after a while. My heart tightened. "What?" "Court documents." I stiffened. "They were marked confidential, but I read enough to understand. You fought harder than I knew." I looked away, staring at the wall. "I lost," I said simply. "You didn't lose," she replied firmly. "You stopped because the judge said continuing would destabilize the child. That's what it said." I closed my eyes. I remember that hearing. I remember Karen crying. I remember Michael's hand on her back like he was the supportive hero. "I thought if I kept pushing, they'd make it worse for you at home, so I stepped back." Emma's jaw trembled. "They told me you stopped calling." "I wasn't allowed to," I said quietly. "It had to go through them." Her shoulders sagged as another piece of the truth settled into place. For a long time, we just sat there, rebuilding reality one sentence at a time. Finally, she spoke again. "I didn't just come for answers. I came because I can't live there anymore." A chill ran through me. "Why?" She hesitated. "Michael's been making decisions about my life, my college, my job, even who I date." My hands tightened around my mug. "He says he invested too much in raising me to let me throw my future away." "You're 20, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know." "Does your mother agree with him?" "She says he just wants what's best." The same script, the same calm logic. "I told them last week that I found the letters. He got furious, said you planted them, said you were manipulating me again." I felt something harden inside me. "And that's when I knew," she whispered. "If he has to rewrite the truth to stay in control, then maybe he's been doing it all along." She looked up at me then, vulnerable and afraid. "I don't know how to live without someone telling me what to think." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we'll figure it out," I said, "one choice at a time." Her fingers tightened around mine. For the first time in 7 years, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was needed, and I wasn't going anywhere. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was worried she would leave, but because I was afraid I would wake up and find out it had all been a dream. Every small sound in the house made my heart jump. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator. Once, around 2 in the morning, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. I opened my bedroom door and found Emma standing there in the dim light. "Sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." She hesitated. "Do you still leave the hallway light on?" I felt something twist in my chest. "I can," I said gently. She gave a small nod. Michael used to say it was childish. Childish. The word irritated me more than I expected. Childhood is supposed to be childish. That's the point. I walked past her and flipped on the hallway light. It cast a soft yellow glow along the walls. When I turned back, her expression had softened. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't ever have to be embarrassed about needing comfort," I replied. She looked at me like she wanted to say something more, but instead she just went back into her room. I lay awake afterward, staring at the ceiling. For years, I had imagined protecting her from something tangible, a bully, a reckless driver, a broken heart. I never imagined I would need to protect her from doubt planted inside her own mind. The next morning, I woke early and made pancakes, chocolate chip. I wasn't sure if she still liked them, but some habits feel sacred. When she walked into the kitchen, her hair messy and eyes still heavy with sleep, I saw a glimpse of the little girl who used to pad down the hallway in footed pajamas. "You still make those?" she asked, almost shyly. "Some traditions don't expire," I said. She smiled, really smiled this time, and sat down at the table. For a few minutes, we just ate. It felt almost normal. Almost like the years in between had folded quietly into the background. Then her phone buzzed. The sound shifted the air instantly. She froze. "Is it him?" I asked gently. She glanced at the screen and nodded. "Michael." She didn't answer. It buzzed again, then again. "You don't have to ignore it," I said. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't say anything yet." The phone stopped. A minute later, another buzz. A text this time. She stared at it, her face draining of color. "What does it say?" I asked carefully. She swallowed. "He says I'm being dramatic, that I'll come to my senses, that you're filling my head with lies." I felt anger flare hot and sharp, but I forced my voice to remain steady. "Emma," I said, leaning forward slightly, "I haven't said a single negative word about him since you got here." "I know," she said quickly. "That's what scares him." The truth doesn't need shouting. It just needs space. Her phone buzzed again. This time, her shoulders flinched. "May I?" I asked softly, holding out my hand. She hesitated, then placed the phone in my palm. I didn't read the previous messages. I didn't scroll. I just looked at the newest one. "You're confused. He's manipulating you. Come home and we'll fix this." Fix this, like she was broken machinery. I handed the phone back to her. "You're not confused. You're thinking." Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time there was something steadier beneath them. "I don't want to go back, but I feel guilty." Guilt is powerful, especially when someone has trained you to feel responsible for their emotions. She stared at me stunned. "That's exactly how it feels," she whispered. I nodded slowly. Control doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like calm disappointment, like logic that leaves no room for your own voice. She sat back in her chair, absorbing that. "I don't even know what I want," she admitted. "I was supposed to go to business school because he said it's stable. I was supposed to intern at his friend's firm. I was supposed to move into an apartment he already picked. And what do you want?" I asked gently. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I don't know," she repeated. That wasn't failure. That was honesty. Then that's where we start. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Michael. It was Karen. Emma's breath caught. She looked at me, asking silently for guidance. You can answer, or you can wait. Either choice is yours. She stared at the screen for a long moment before swiping to answer. Hi, Mom, she said softly. I couldn't hear Karen's voice, but I could see the tension in Emma's posture. No, I'm safe, she said quickly. I'm with Dad. A pause. No, he didn't convince me of anything. Another pause, longer this time. Emma's jaw tightened slightly. I'm not being disrespectful, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I'm just needed space. Her free hand gripped the edge of the table. I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing myself. I felt something swell in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Pride. There was muffled talking from the other end. Then Emma's eyes filled again. I love you, she said quietly, but I can't come back right now. She ended the call before her courage could dissolve. The kitchen fell silent. She stared at the table, breathing hard. I've never said no before, she whispered. I stood and walked around the table slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder. You just did, I said softly. She let out a shaky laugh through tears. For the first time, I realized something important. This wasn't just about her coming home. It was about her learning that she had a voice. And maybe, just maybe, this time, no one was going to silence it.
The days that followed were strangely fragile. Emma didn't unpack her suitcase completely, not at first. She folded a few clothes into the dresser, left the rest inside like she might still need to leave quickly. I didn't comment on it. Healing doesn't respond well to pressure. Michael kept calling the first 2 days, then texting, long messages, calm, controlled, full of words like concern and stability and future. Emma showed me a few of them without asking what I thought. She didn't need my opinion anymore. She just needed confirmation that she wasn't imagining the pattern. One message stood out. I've sacrificed too much for you to throw this away over emotional confusion. She stared at that line for a long time. I didn't ask him to sacrifice anything, she said quietly. That's the thing about certain sacrifices. They're sometimes investments disguised as love. She looked at me slowly, absorbing that. On the 3rd day, the call stopped. Silence can be louder than shouting. Emma started helping around the house, washing dishes, wiping counters. It felt less like contribution and more like she was trying to earn her place. You don't have to prove anything here, I told her one evening when I caught her vacuuming for the 2nd time that day. She paused. I'm just used to expectations. You're not a guest. You're my daughter. That word still felt new on my tongue again. Not distant, not theoretical. Real. That night after dinner, she surprised me. Can I see them? She asked. See what? The letters you didn't send. My chest tightened. I hadn't shown them to anyone, not friends, not therapists, not even myself for years at a time. They were pieces of me I had sealed away so I wouldn't bleed out. But I nodded. I walked to my bedroom closet and pulled down the wooden box from the top shelf. The lid creaked when I opened it like it had been holding its breath. I carried it to the living room and set it on the coffee table between us. Emma stared at it like it might explode. These are yours, I said quietly. Every word. She lifted the first envelope carefully. It was dated the year after that birthday phone call, her 13th birthday. She opened it slowly and began reading. I watched her face instead of the page.
I knew the words by heart anyway. In that letter, I had written about how proud I was of her for navigating a complicated world at such a young age. I told her I hoped she never confused silence with absence. I told her I would always be reachable, even if I had to wait. Her lips trembled. "You wrote that you were learning to be patient," she whispered, "that sometimes love means stepping back." "I didn't want you caught in a tug-of-war," I said softly. She reached for another envelope, then another. Each one was a snapshot of a father trying to stay connected through paper. Updates about my life, memories of her childhood, encouragement about exams she didn't know I knew about. In one letter, I had written about driving past her old elementary school just to remember the way she used to wave from the gate. She covered her mouth as she read that one. "I thought you forgot those little things," she said through tears. I forgot nothing. Hours passed like that, the room growing darker around us as she opened pieces of the past. By the time she finished the last one, her cheeks were wet, but her posture was different, straighter. "They stole time," she said quietly. I didn't answer immediately. "Yes," I admitted, "but they didn't steal everything." She looked at me. "They didn't steal this," I said, gesturing between us. The next morning, there was another knock at the door. This one wasn't hesitant. It was firm. Emma froze in the hallway. My stomach dropped. "I'll get it," I said calmly. But I already knew. When I opened the door, Michael stood there. He looked exactly as I remembered, neatly dressed, composed, expression controlled. "Good morning," he said evenly. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm here for Emma." "She's not an object," I replied. His jaw tightened slightly, but his tone remained measured. "She's upset. I'm here to fix that." "She's not broken," I said. For a split second, something flashed in his eyes. Irritation. "I think it's best if we handle this privately," he said, glancing past me into the house. "She can decide who she speaks to," I answered. Emma stepped into the hallway behind me. "I'll talk to him," she said quietly. I moved aside, but stayed near. Michael's face softened instantly when he saw her. "There you are," he said almost warmly. "We've been worried sick." "I told Mom I'm safe," she replied. "You don't belong here," he said gently. "You're reacting emotionally. He's filling your head." Emma's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't step back. "I read the letters," she said. Michael blinked once. "They were planted to manipulate you," he replied smoothly. "No," she said, her voice steadier now. "They were dated, postmarked, unopened." He shifted slightly. "You're confused," he insisted. Emma took a slow breath. "For the first time in years," she said calmly, "I'm not." Silence stretched between them. "You're throwing away stability," he warned. "Your future." "My future isn't a contract you signed," she answered. I felt something inside me swell again. He looked at me then as if I had orchestrated this. "You always were emotional," he said coolly. "And you always were controlling," I replied quietly. His expression hardened. "This isn't over," he said. "It is," Emma answered before I could speak. And for the first time since that birthday phone call 7 years ago, she chose to stay. He turned and walked away without another word. Emma closed the door herself. Her hands were shaking, but she was standing. After Michael left, the house felt strangely quiet, like the air itself was recalibrating. Emma stood with her hand still resting on the doorknob, staring at the wood as if expecting him to knock again. Her shoulders were tight, her breathing shallow. "He's not coming back right now," I said gently. She nodded, but she didn't move. I stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "You did something very hard." Her laugh came out shaky. "My legs feel like jelly." "That's adrenaline," I replied softly. "It passes." She finally turned to face me. There was fear in her eyes, but there was something else now, too. A spark of recognition, like she'd just met a version of herself she didn't know existed. "I've never disagreed with him to his face," she admitted. "Not like that." "You weren't disagreeing, you were defining." She blinked at that. "Defining what's yours, your thoughts, your future, your voice." Her eyes welled again, but this time the tears didn't fall. They just hovered there, bright and alive. "What if he turns Mom against me more?" she whispered. I exhaled slowly. "He may try." That wasn't what she wanted to hear, but honesty is a better foundation than comfort built on lies. "But," I added gently, "truth has a way of staying steady, even if people don't accept it immediately." She walked back to the living room and sat down heavily. I joined her. For a while, we didn't talk. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. "I used to think he was strong, confident, reliable. And now? Now I think he's afraid." I didn't respond right away. I wanted her to reach that understanding on her own. "Afraid of what?" I asked after a moment. She thought about it. "Afraid that if I think for myself, I won't need him." There it was. Control often wears the mask of guidance, but it trembles when independence shows up. "I don't hate him," she added quickly, almost defensively. "I just see him." That's enough. Later that afternoon, Emma asked if we could go for a walk. It was a cool October day, the kind where the air smells like dry leaves and distant wood smoke. We walked side by side down the quiet street. At first, we talked about small things, the neighbor's new dog, the old oak tree that had finally been cut down last year. Then she said something that stopped me mid-step. "I think I know what I want to study." I looked at her. "Psychology," she said softly. "I want to understand how people's minds work, how they influence each other, how they heal." My throat tightened. "That's a powerful path," I said. She nodded. "Michael said it was impractical, that business was smarter." "And what do you think?" "I think I've spent most of my life trying to survive someone else's expectations. Maybe I want to help people untangle that." I felt pride surge through me so intensely it almost hurt. "You'd be good at that," I said honestly. She smiled faintly. "You really think so?" "I know so." We continued walking, and for the first time in years, our steps felt synchronized. That evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, researching universities. She asked me questions not because she needed permission, but because she valued input. "What about this one?" she asked, turning the screen toward me. I leaned over to look. "It's a good program, but what feels right to you?" She studied the screen again. "I don't know yet," I replied. "That's okay. Choosing slowly is still choosing." Her phone buzzed once more. This time it was a message from her mother. Emma hesitated before opening it. It was shorter than the others. "Come home so we can talk calmly. We miss you." Emma read it twice. "She sounds softer," she said quietly. "I might be, or she might be uncomfortable." Emma looked conflicted. "I don't want to lose her," she whispered. "You don't have to," I said gently. "Setting boundaries isn't the same as abandoning someone." She absorbed that. "I think I need to talk to her. Not here, not there, somewhere neutral." I nodded. "I'll support whatever makes you feel safe." The next day, she arranged to meet her mother at a cafe halfway between our houses. Before she left, she stood in the hallway adjusting her jacket nervously. "What if I freeze?" "You won't, but if you do, silence is still yours. No one gets to rush your words." She hugged me before walking out the door. The house felt unbearably empty again while she was gone. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wooden box of letters still resting there. For years, those letters were my only connection to her. Now she was out in the world, building her own sentences in real time. An hour passed, then two. Finally, the front door opened. Emma stepped inside slowly. I stood immediately. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "She cried," Emma said. "Mom cried." I felt something shift inside me. She said she didn't realize how much control he had, that she thought he was just organized. That sounded familiar. I told her about the letters, about the court papers, about how small I felt. "And?" I asked carefully. She didn't deny it. She just said she was tired, that it was easier to let him lead. I closed my eyes briefly. "Are you going back?" I asked carefully. Emma looked around the house, at the photos, at the hallway light still glowing faintly. "No," she said firmly. "I'm staying here." Then she added something that nearly broke me in the best way possible. "I want to rebuild this. Not fix, not erase, rebuild." And for the first time in 7 years, the future didn't feel like something I was waiting for. It felt like something we were walking toward together. Rebuilding didn't happen in grand gestures. It happened in small, ordinary moments. Emma started unpacking the rest of her suitcase the next morning. It shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but when I saw her empty the final drawer and slide it shut, something inside me settled. She wasn't standing halfway between two lives anymore. She was choosing. The first week was full of adjustments. She wasn't used to silence that didn't feel tense. She wasn't used to making decisions without anticipating criticism. Sometimes she would ask me simple things. "Is it okay if I shower now?" Or "Should I eat the last yogurt?" And I'd gently remind her that this wasn't a place of permissions. It was a place of sharing. One evening, while we were washing dishes together, she asked, "Did you ever think about giving up?" The question was quiet but heavy. "On what?" I asked. "On me." I turned off the faucet and looked at her fully. "No," I said immediately. "Not even when I stopped answering messages, when I told you not to come?" I dried my hands slowly before answering. "I thought about protecting myself," I admitted. "I thought about trying to hurt less, but giving up on you? That was never an option." She leaned back against the counter, absorbing that. "I used to think love faded if you didn't feed it constantly," she said. "Real love waits," I replied. "It doesn't disappear just because it's quiet." She nodded, but I could tell she was still untangling things inside her mind. A few days later, she received an email from the university she'd been researching, an invitation to attend an informational session for their psychology program. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a door. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. "Apply," I said simply. "What if I don't get in?" "Then you apply somewhere else. And if I fail?" "Then you learn." She studied my face carefully, as if waiting for the hidden catch. "There isn't one," I said softly. "You're allowed to try." That night, she began her application essay. I didn't hover. I didn't correct her grammar. I just sat in the living room while she typed at the kitchen table, occasionally pausing to stare into space. Around midnight, she called out softly, "Dad?" I walked over. "Can you read this?" She turned the laptop toward me. Her essay began with a line that made my throat tighten. "I grew up learning how silence can shape a person." She wrote about confusion, about loving two households and feeling like a traitor in both, about the slow realization that control can wear the mask of care. She didn't name Michael. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply told the truth. When I finished reading, I had to clear my throat before speaking. "It's honest," I said, "and brave." "You don't think it's too personal?" "I think it's real, and real changes people." She clicked submit the next afternoon. Then came the waiting. During that time, something else shifted. Karen began calling Emma directly without Michael present. Their conversations were awkward at first, careful, measured. One evening, Emma put her phone on speaker while we sat at the table. "I don't want to fight," Karen said through the line, her voice tired. "I just want to understand." "I'm not fighting. I'm just choosing." There was a long pause. "I should have paid more attention," Karen admitted. "I thought structure was safety." Emma's expression softened slightly. "Structure isn't the same as control," she said quietly. I stayed silent, letting their conversation belong to them. After the call ended, Emma sat back in her chair. "She sounded smaller," she murmured. "People sometimes shrink when the illusion breaks," I said. "Do you hate her?" Emma asked suddenly. I met her gaze. "No," I said truthfully. "I think she made choices out of fear. That doesn't make them harmless, but it makes them human." Emma considered that. "I don't want to carry anger forever," she said. "You don't have to," I replied. "Forgiveness isn't pretending nothing happened. It's deciding it won't control you anymore." She nodded slowly. A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. University letterhead. Emma held it like it was fragile glass. "Open it," I encouraged softly. She tore it carefully, scanning the page. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I got in," she whispered. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she laughed, a full, unguarded laugh that filled the room in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. I pulled her into a hug without hesitation this time. "You did that. Not me, not anyone else. You." She clung to me tightly. "I almost didn't apply," she admitted against my chest. "I almost chose what was easier." "But you didn't." She pulled back, eyes shining. "Dad," she said softly, "thank you for waiting." Those words hit deeper than any apology ever could. I wasn't waiting, I was believing. That evening we baked a chocolate cake, not because it was her birthday, but because we had something to celebrate. As the candles flickered in the dim kitchen light, she looked at me with a steady, certain expression. "You're coming to my orientation," she said. It wasn't a question. I smiled. I wouldn't miss it for anything. And for the first time in 7 years, I knew without doubt she would never have to tell me not to come again. University orientation day arrived faster than either of us expected. Emma stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting her blouse for the 3rd time. It was simple, light blue, professional without trying too hard. She looked older than 20 in that moment, not because of the clothes, because of the steadiness in her eyes. "You're staring," she said, catching my reflection behind her. "I'm memorizing," I replied. She rolled her eyes lightly, but she was smiling. The campus was an hour away. During the drive, she kept glancing at the acceptance folder resting on her lap like it might disappear. I kept my hands steady on the steering wheel, though inside my chest felt tight with something dangerously close to joy. As we pulled into the university parking lot, she went quiet. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, "Just thinking about how different this feels." "Different how?" "I'm not here because someone planned it." I parked the car and turned her fully. "You're here because you chose it," I said. She exhaled slowly. The campus buzzed with nervous energy. Students walking in clusters, parents carrying folders, staff members smiling too brightly. It was chaotic and hopeful all at once. Emma stepped out of the car and paused, looking around. For a second, I saw it, the flicker of doubt, the old habit of scanning for approval. Then she straightened her shoulders. We walked toward the main building together. Inside, volunteers handed out name tags. Emma pinned hers to her blouse. I noticed her hands didn't shake this time. During the welcome speech, I sat a few rows behind her. I didn't want to hover. I wanted her to feel independent, not supervised. The dean spoke about resilience, about students who arrive with complicated histories, about education as a tool for understanding, not just careers, but people. I saw Emma's back straighten slightly at that. After the session, students were directed to smaller breakout groups. Parents were invited to a separate Q&A in another hall. Emma hesitated before walking toward her assigned room. "Go," I said softly. "I'll be right here when you're done." She nodded and disappeared into the crowd. I sat in the parents' session, listening to discussions about housing and course structures, but my mind drifted. 7 years ago, I wasn't sure I would ever sit in a room like this again. I wasn't sure I would ever be invited into her future. Now I was here, not fighting, not proving, just present. When the sessions ended, students flooded the hallway talking animatedly. I scanned faces until I found hers. She was laughing with 2 other girls, laughing freely. When she saw me, she excused herself and walked over. "They're both psychology majors, too. We're thinking about forming a study group." "You already have plans," I teased. She smiled. "I guess I do." On the drive home, she was lighter. She talked about classes, about professors, about joining a volunteer counseling hotline someday. "I feel like I can breathe," she admitted. "You've been holding your breath a long time." That evening, as we pulled into the driveway, a car was parked across the street. I recognized it instantly. Michael. Emma saw it too. Her posture stiffened. "He doesn't get to ruin today," she said firmly. Before I could respond, the driver's door opened. Michael stepped out, composed as ever. I felt old anger stir, but I stayed calm. He approached slowly. "I heard about the university," he said evenly. "Congratulations." Emma didn't respond right away. "Thank you," she said finally. He looked at me briefly, then back at her. "I just want you to think carefully. Psychology is competitive, uncertain. Business would have guaranteed stability." Emma met his gaze without flinching. "Stability without autonomy isn't stability," she replied, calmly. He blinked. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "I know, but you don't get to direct my life anymore." There was no anger in her voice, just clarity. He shifted slightly, as if recalculating. "Your mother misses you," he added. "I'm seeing her this weekend, without pressure." His jaw tightened subtly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No, I'm making it honest." Silence stretched between them. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, but something in her expression, steady, unafraid, seemed to stop him. He looked at me one last time. "You think you won," he said quietly. I shook my head. This was never about winning. He didn't respond. He returned to his car and drove away. Emma stood still until the car disappeared down the street. Then she let out a long breath. "I didn't shake," she said, almost surprised. "No," I agreed. "You didn't." She turned to me slowly. "I used to think strength meant control. Now I think it means peace." I smiled softly. "That's a better definition." That night we sat on the back porch as the sky darkened. The air was cool, calm. "Do you think things will ever be normal?" she asked. "Normal changes, but healthy? Yes, that's possible." She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder.
"I don't regret coming," she said quietly. "Neither do I." We sat in silence for a while. 7 years ago, silence felt like absence. Now it felt like rest. And for the first time in a long time, the past no longer felt like something chasing us. It felt like something we had finally outrun.
The weeks after orientation passed in a rhythm that felt almost sacred. Emma settled into a routine she chose herself. Classes she genuinely wanted to take, evenings spent reading or helping at a local youth counseling center, weekends exploring the city on her own. Slowly, deliberately, she began to reclaim the life that had been pushed into corners for so long. We celebrated small victories, her first A on a paper, successfully navigating public transport alone, making new friends. Each milestone was a reminder that independence wasn't something to fear, it was something she deserved. One evening, a few weeks after she started, she came into the kitchen holding a small, neatly folded envelope. Her hands shook slightly as she handed it to me. "For you," she said softly. I took it, noticing the familiar handwriting. It was from her, not a letter like she used to write as a child, but a message she had composed carefully, thoughtfully, her own words now, fully her own. The letter read, "Dad, thank you for waiting. Thank you for believing. I was lost for a long time, but you never let me go completely. I'm learning who I am, and I'm learning it's okay to choose myself. I don't just want to survive, I want to live, and I can do that because of you." I blinked, swallowing hard. My hands trembled as I folded it carefully and held it close. "That's beautiful," I whispered. She sat down next to me. "I wanted to tell you before I said it out loud anywhere else." We stayed like that for a long while, the quiet between us filled with understanding, relief, and a deep, unspoken love that had survived years of absence. Not long after, we received a call from Karen. She wanted to meet somewhere neutral. Emma agreed, and I went with her for support, though she made every decision about the conversation herself. At the cafe, the meeting was awkward at first. Karen was tentative, careful not to trigger old dynamics. Emma was cautious, polite, but firm. "I wanted to apologize," Karen said finally. "I see now that I let him speak for me, for both of us, and I let fear control my judgment." Emma nodded slowly. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but I needed to step away to see clearly. That wasn't easy for any of us." Karen reached across the table and took her daughter's hand gently. "I want to rebuild, if you'll let me." Emma squeezed her hand, careful but willing. "I think we can start small, step by step. No pressure, just honesty." I watched them, my heart tight but proud. For years I had carried the fear that our family would be irreparable, but here in that small cafe I saw a beginning. Not perfect, not unscarred, but real. When we left the cafe, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Thanks for letting me choose," she said quietly. "You didn't need my permission, you needed my presence, and I'll always be here." The following months were about rebuilding trust and boundaries. Emma thrived at university, but she also learned how to navigate relationships with her mother and extended family, always deciding when and how to engage. Michael tried a few times to reach out, but Emma was steady. Each time she simply said no, calmly, without anger, and he eventually stopped. One evening, as we sat on the porch together, she turned to me with a small smile. "Dad, "Do you remember when I told you not to come, that phone call?" I remember, the memory still sharp. I remember. "You understand now," she continued. "I didn't know what I was saying. I was scared, confused, and I believed what I was told, but it wasn't really me." "No, it wasn't," I said softly. "I wish I could go back and tell 12-year-old me to trust you," she said, voice trembling slightly. "You did what you could with the tools you had, and now you have more tools and the choice to use them." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I'm glad I came back." "So am I whispered. Weeks later, I watched her move into her first apartment near campus. She had chosen everything herself, the furniture, the layout, the colors. She was proud, independent, alive. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she said again, the words simple but full of everything we had endured together. "You never needed to thank me," I said. "You needed to find yourself. I just waited." She smiled, stepping back, her eyes bright and confident. "I think I found her." As I drove home, I realized the years of absence, the heartbreak, and the silent waiting had all led to this. Not a perfect ending, no story like this is perfect, but a beginning, a chance to walk forward together, not in shadows, not in silence, but side by side. That night, I went into the living room and opened the wooden box of letters once more. I didn't reread them. I didn't need to. Each one had served its purpose. They were a testament to patience, to love, to hope that doesn't falter even when unseen. I placed the box back on the shelf and looked out the window at the quiet street. Life wasn't neat and it wasn't simple, but it was ours. And for the first time in 7 years, the silence between us was no longer filled with absence or doubt. It was filled with understanding, forgiveness, and the steady, unwavering pulse of love that had never stopped. Emma would live her life freely now, fully herself, unafraid of being manipulated or silenced, and I would remain her father, not a distant shadow, not a waiting voice, but a constant, present guide, proud and humbled by the strength she had discovered within herself. Some nights I still think about that phone call and the words that shattered me. "Dad, don't come. Michael says it's too complicated." But now I understand. It wasn't complicated, it was just life. Messy, painful, and unfair at times. But love, real love, endures, even when tested, even when it seems impossible, even when the world tells you to step back. Because in the end, love waits. And when it's time, it finds a way to return. And that night, as I sat in the quiet house, I realized she had returned. Not just to me, but to herself. And that was everything.